this one book that we were shooting, we had an artist draw different, like ritualistic kind of things and symbols. And, like a lot of it he made up from his head, I think, but he might have researched some other ones. I'm not quite sure. But we had to shoot that thing, no joke, 3 different times, because every time something would go wrong with the card that would be saving the file.
Oh,
and it got to the point where on the 4th try it worked. But if it didn't on the 4th try, no joke, I was going to literally say, okay, we should not be doing this. Like, there's something about it which doesn't want to be captured.
You guys are certainly in for one major, scary, and horrific treat. We have horror producer Justin Ross, who has produced films such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, the new Mortuary Collection starring Clancy Brown, and Euphoria's Jacob Elordi, and his upcoming project, The Old Ways. Let's sit down with our friend Justin as we talk about horror and what it's like working in the horror industry. And of course, the moment you've all been waiting for, hauntings on a horror film set. Justin has quite a collection of experiences and tales from cast and crew members who have experienced something otherworldly while on location during the shoot of these films. What goes bump behind camera? And what were the causes of these battery packs and cameras going on the fritz while shooting on these haunted locations? We also discuss what it's like working a whole 2 weeks at the infamously haunted Heritage Square, located here in Los Angeles, California. So sit back, relax, and quiet on the set as we roll sound and call action. Now let's get Holly Weird with horror producer Justin Ross. They're coming to get you, all you Holly Weirdos. Hey guys, it's Tammy here. And real quickly, I just wanted to share some exciting news with you all. We have partnered up with an amazing company called Jupiter. Jupiter is a company based out of the US, and they produce some amazing organic CBD drops. If you're one of the 90% of us who feel stressed, it's time to try Jupiter. Their USDA organic CBD drops help you feel relaxed and happy without any high. So it's time to invest in yourself. Now, what we found very unique and found comforting about Jupiter is that the products are made in the USA. They're carefully crafted from single origin family farms. They're sustainable, triple lab tested, and their hemp extract is made with only flowers, the most valuable part of the plant. They're also certified organic, meaning they're 100% USDA certified, all natural, vegan, and non-GMO. Another great detail about Jupiter CBD drops is that they offer 3 types of strengths. You can opt for the low, the medium, or the strong, which is 450 milligram to 1350 milligram. I'm currently on the medium, which is 900, and I absolutely love it. It has definitely helped me out with my depression. It's helped me create a better sleep cycle, and it's definitely offered me a ton of clarity. Now, it's guaranteed stress relief. It offers a fresh mint flavor, and there's a 30-day risk-free trial and free shipping and free returns. If you are not up for the product, if it doesn't work out for you, it's absolutely okay. To learn more about Jupiter, head on over to getjupiter.com. That's getjupiter.com. Use the code TAM, T-A-M, to save 20% off your first order. Feel calm, focused, and happy. It's time to let go of your stress with Jupiter Organic CBD Drops. Now, on with the show.
All right. So, hey guys, we are sitting here today with not only one of my really good friends from grad school, but also a producer in the horror genre. And I'm so proud of him and all of his endeavors. Guys, I want to introduce you to my friend Justin T. You're awesome. Also, one of the producers of the Mortuary Collection, which quite a few of you guys have seen. And if you haven't, then where have you been? It is a horror anthology. It stars Clancy Brown and Euphoria's Jacob Elordi. Justin, hello.
Hi.
Hey, Justin, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into the horror genre.
Sure. So, Tammy, we go way back now.
Oh,
we're back
my
to
God. I feel
Florida
so old.
State. I know. I won't get into specifics to spare us that. But it was a long time ago, and we're down in Florida, and I'd always loved horror films, obviously, like a lot of us who are kind of in the business. It's like one of the first times that we really experience feeling a power in cinema, and. So when we're down there at Florida State, I ended up running into my directing partner, Ryan Smidell, who is the writer-director of the Mortuary Collection. And although, I love horror films, he is kind of like fully in love with horror films. And this guy has been studying it and eats, drinks, sleeps, breathes horror films. And so his love kind of like, I think, brought a lot of us to engage with that genre even more. And I was one of them. And so we all kind of got together and started to make scary movies, and we haven't stopped. So
now you mentioned Florida State. Do you? I know not a lot of our listeners are fans of this other podcast. And guys, Justin, Ryan, and I, we went to school with these two. Well, actually, a couple of these peeps from my last podcast on the left. We went to school with Henry and Jackie Zabrowski, and
that's right.
We also went to school with Holden McNeely as well. So we went to school with all of them.
So it's always like such a small world.
It is, especially in theater. That is so true.
City, but it's actually the largest little town. You're just like, oh, everyone knows each other somehow.
It is, and in Tallahassee,
especially in the genre community too.
Yeah.
It's like it's even smaller. So yeah.
Quite small. And when you're living in Tallahassee, you just know everyone. So small town mentality. So yeah, guys, we have 6 degrees of separation with like Henry and Jackie Zabrowski and Holden McNeely. And so let's jump into this. So we actually met on a little film that you guys were doing, your thesis film. And that was with Ryan, and that was oh my God, I forgot the name of it. Kirksdale. Yeah. So there's this thing with horror and haunts. It seems like every location that you find, Justin, is haunted. Can you imagine, Bryce, if Bryce was starring in any of these films, like there'd have to be several waivers for him to sign.
Full Liv Tyler, like I will be in The Strangers. It will be a whole thing.
We should so Bryce, if you ever come out to one of our sets, we need to have a behind-the-scenes cameraman just on you, is what you're saying.
Honestly, that's it. That's all you need.
Definitely the best way to spend budget.
That becomes its own movie.
Watch
Bryce on horror sets.
But yeah, there seems to be this element where every single place that we shoot, and even starting from the thesis film where we met, it was haunted, and there were a lot of stories attached to it. Justin, can you tell us like a couple of stories? We got a couple from Callie.
Sure.
She was on our we got a couple from Callie when we talked about the mortuary, and a little tidbit when I spoke about the thesis, but you pretty much got the gist of everything that was going on.
Sure. You want me? Okay, so I'll tell you the Kirksdale kind of setup. This place, it was beautiful. It's magical, and we seek out these like really dark, spooky places that have a lot of character. But normally dark, spooky places have a lot of character are haunted. So we were looking for an old kind of like semi-abandoned or empty building that was kind of by itself, and we searched the whole area of like Florida and Georgia and such, and eventually found this old abandoned plantation mansion And it was what, like 3 stories, wouldn't you say, Tammy?
It was
Yeah,
3 stories
it was
and
3
way out
stories
there.
and a big basement. Yeah, and it was just all by itself, like trees that lined the driveway up to it from like I felt like a mile drive. But the creepy thing is, like, to get there, it took about maybe 15 minutes of a drive on a lonely little gravel road where you haven't seen anyone else for like 15 minutes, not even like a shack. It's just empty, 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 like fields. And you
Yeah.
keep going and going and going. All of a sudden, this monstrosity appears. And it was beautiful and haunting and old and kind of like creepy, you know, because it's probably got a eerie past with it being kind of like plantations and such. So in there, it's like kind of this, I don't know, how would you describe it? Old architecture, very southern.
Yeah, very
kind of
Savannah-esque, I would say.
Yeah.
Trying to get there with Google Maps or Yahoo Maps was pretty interesting because, yes, it was back then, guys, before we had
the maps on
navigational.
You got your printout of the
Yeah,
directions.
exactly.
Yeah.
All of
Just follow
us
these
did.
paper directions.
Yeah, part of being a producer back in the day was warning your crew to actually get lost and never be found again. So it was a little scary going all the way out there. But so we're out there, and you know, part of making a movie is you got to be there ahead of time. You're prepping and you're designing and you're building and you're set dressing and all that jazz. And our production designer was a guy by the name of Arturo Yepes, and he was awesome and a good friend. And so he was there a couple days prior, kind of by himself, because, you know, it's a student thesis film. We didn't have a big crew. So he was like building fake bars on windows and setting up like a little medical kind of autopsy room in the basement by himself, which is already starting to probably make things a little creepy in his brain. But he's a pretty tough dude. He was an older guy, and he had like he was from Ecuador. He'd even been kidnapped once before at like knife point. So like he doesn't really bat an eye at such things. But I remember strongly we pulled up the morning of the first day of production, and he had spent the night there by himself. And I was the first one to get there, going to unlock things and everything, to meet him with some coffee. And I pulled up after that long drive, and he's sitting on the front steps by himself, like smoking a cigarette. And you could tell, like, there was a whole pile of butts in front of him. Like, cigarette butts, not butts, you know.
Yeah.
And I pull up, and I'm like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm good. Glad you're here. It's great. Thanks for coffee." It's like, I'm gonna go now. I'm like, "What's going on?" It's like, and so he told me this story where basically he was in the basement building this medical area, and up top he kept hearing like doors and footsteps and things, and he thought that someone, like, I'd shown up to, like, I don't know, bring coffee in the middle of the night or something. And so he'd go up, look around, and be like, hello, no one's in here. And again, this thing is like, you don't stumble across this thing. There isn't like a gardener or a groundskeeper or someone that can just kind of like stick their head in. So no one was up there, and he'd go out, he'd open up the front door and look, and there isn't a car anywhere. No one could walk to this place. And so it kind of really drove home the fact that, like, for a while he thought someone was like hiding in the building,
Right.
because it was so loud. And he was like, okay, maybe it's just in my head, and, you know, I'm starting to psych myself out because it was spooky. So he went downstairs and kept working, and then more footsteps. And it wasn't just like one person's footsteps, but it was like multiple sets. And they started not just walking, but running.
Oh my God.
And so then he's like, oh my God. And he got so freaked out that he found he had a radio, something in his car, like a portable radio, and he just turned it up and barricaded the door that he was in and kept working. So he couldn't hear the noises up top, but apparently it got so loud that it was like he had to just drown them out and pretend that it wasn't there. So he got his work done like a great production designer, and then ran upstairs and shut the door and sat there and waited for me to show up in the morning.
So, oh my God.
Yeah, pretty spooky.
What a trooper. Like, for him, he's like, no, I'm just going to drown you out with the radio.
Yeah. And if it's me, I think I would have left. Yeah. Like, you know what?
Bryce would have ran, like, he would have sprinted. It would have been like a record-breaking sprint.
Oh, yeah. You lost me at basement, so.
That was great. It was great.
That was one of the stories that circulated, was Arturo's experience, which was something, you know, very interesting, because, like, he is not into this kind of stuff. He doesn't believe, I don't think he believed in it. And he was just more of like, let's get this job done. And no matter how many times he tried to, like, I guess, block it out, it was still, you know, scaring the crap out of him.
I mean, I feel like he was unnerved, but wasn't frightened. He was just like, okay, I'm going to deal with this. I got it. I'll just lock the door, and then I can feel okay, and turn up the music so I don't hear it, good, just do my work. So, because almost anyone else would have like cracked and ran, and then we wouldn't have a set.
That
That's
is such a
true.
commitment to his job. Like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep working. Like, I'm pretty sure you get hazard pay for that or something.
And somehow, I think we were paying, if you think about it. So
Yeah.
it was very strange. The dynamic was off there, for sure. But yeah, a lot of spooky stuff down there. When the owners came by set to see it, and they're like, "Oh, want to see what's going on?" Blah 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 blah. I had noticed. How did this come up? Oh yeah, so I had noticed because again, I'd normally be the first person there and the last person out. I wanted to make sure all the lights were off, because we didn't want to like run out the power. We weren't paying for that. They're being very kind to let us use it. So I noticed there was one room when I'd go to lock everything up and turn off the lights, that the light would usually be on. So I turned it off. But then I started to think that I was going a little insane because I'd leave and I'd start driving away and I'd look back and that dang room, the light would still be on. And it's a room in the top right corner of the house. I don't know if you remember this, Danny.
Oh, God,
and
yeah.
so it started kind of like, I'm like, again, kind of like Arturo, maybe it's just in my head. And but when the family showed up, I asked, I'm like, hey, this might sound really stupid, and I bet you get questions about ghosts all the time, but there's this room up there, and I turn off the lights, and I'm trying to be a good steward of your property, but I swear to God, it keeps coming back on. They're like, oh, well, that's so-and-so's room, and that was the last surviving member of the family, and she died there. She stayed there by herself all the way out in the middle of nowhere. And this house, it had servant quarters on the top. Like in its heyday, it was probably bustling with like dozens of people, but in the last few days, it was just this older woman by herself in that room. And apparently she likes to leave the light on. And I'm like, okay, so I've just been turning off the lady's light, probably pissing her off. It would have been good to know that. We could keep it on. I went in there, I apologized, and I like brought another light and I plugged it in. I'm like, here, I'm so sorry if this was upsetting you, because, I'm just trying to save your power.
I remember I think makeup was stationed there, or special effects was stationed there too at one point, and they would tell me like, we're going to turn off the light, Tammy, and watch. I promise you it's going to turn back on once we leave the property. And you can see it like midway when you're like in the middle of the field from the property. And sure enough, when I would look at my rear view mirror, that light, I would see it. It was on. So, and there was no way like from what I remember, like someone being there and turning it back on or being in that FX room. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like interesting stories connected to that property. And I know, I think our lighting, I think it was lighting or sound, had an issue in the library. Even like the first day that we moved in, when we started loading in, like something happened, like a book flew off the bookshelf from one side. Yeah,
that's right. I'd forgotten about that. It flew far.
It flew far. I remember that. I remember I was filling up the tank for the steamer in the bathroom next to the library. And I know it was Kevin. It was Kevin. That was his name, Kevin. And all of a sudden I hear this thump against the wall, and Kevin freaks out, starts cursing up a storm. And I go in and I'm like, Kevin, is everything okay? And he's like, I am not kidding. There is a book that flew from this side of the room, from the bookshelf, and it hit the opposite side of the wall, Tammy, where the wall separating this room and the bathroom. Didn't you hear it? I'm like, yeah, I heard the thump. I thought something fell. He's like, no. I'm like, he was setting up the office table for the doctor for that scene. And he was like, I was nowhere near that bookshelf. That was so unexplainable. But I think it was because it was a mixture of us coming in and whatever. And like, of course, we were doing a major set change and dress. Like we were turning this house, Bryson, to this asylum. And I mean, we're taking doors off and putting bars in them to make it look like they were in prison. And it was a big change. And I'm sure whatever was there was like, what the hell is going on?
I feel like if there was oh yeah, I feel like if there was like a consciousness, though, because I never felt anything like, I didn't feel threatened. I never felt bad juju. It was just like they might have wanted to be like, hey, just so you know, we're here and we're watching you, and don't screw up the house, or don't like abuse it, or take good care of it. And we did. And so I think because no one really screwed around with the house or like damaged things or had disrespect to it, it never really escalated to something that would have been truly terrifying. But yeah, it was the energy felt, it was interesting and eerie, but it never really felt bad or malicious, I think.
Well, and Tam,
Yeah.
we talk about that so often, and like we've talked about that on past episodes, where it's just like the energy you bring into a place is sort of reflected back to you, and so you see these people who go in and they're so disrespectful or just like
Mhm.
callous or like irreverent of the history, and then they're like, and then I was pushed down the stairs, and it's like, well, what did you expect? Like you came in, like if you came into
Exactly.
my house, I would push you down the stairs too,
Yeah.
but I'm just kind of a monster. But like it's just insane. Like it's like you go in expecting no consequences for the things that you bring into it. So it's like
Mhm.
when you go in with like respect and trying to preserve the house and all those things, like that is reflected back to you as well.
Yes,
Totally.
absolutely.
Tammy, did
Now,
I ever tell you about 12 Oaks there? This is maybe one of the scariest things I've ever experienced in my life, and that happened at the same time.
what? No,
So,
do tell. Do tell.
yeah. So, 12 Oaks was a bed and breakfast. Were you staying with us there, or were you at the other bed and breakfast in town?
I can't remember. I I think this was the one that was haunted and it had a haunted room. But I remember staying one night because I had to go back and forth because I was teaching
That's
tech
right. That's
classes.
right.
Yeah, but I remember
Oh,
there
oh,
was
then you drove. I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, I remember I had to stay at night because it was like one of the biggest shoots that we were doing, and that's when we were doing the bloodbath shoot with Josh and everything. So I had to be there overnight. Okay.
Was it in town or out of town where you
I
stayed?
believe it was in town, but I remember
Okay.
like
Yeah.
everyone was staying there, and
Right.
Mm.
Right.
I
That's
remember.
the case.
Okay.
So there are two bed and breakfasts that we put the cast and crew up in this little town, Monticello, Florida, and it was the closest town to this plantation that we shot Kirkstone at. My story is at 12 Oaks, which was an old mansion on the outskirts of town, so there wasn't anything else around. And we got there, and it's this cool, beautiful old thing, but it was a true plantation as well. And in the back, you can see the remnants of where the slave quarters were, like these shacks. It's
Oh
really
my
eerie.
god.
And but again, tree-lined streets going up to it all by itself, kind of old semi-Gothic building. And so we all stayed there, and the gentleman that ran it was a guy by the name of Ian, and he was a nice enough dude. He liked supporting film students. He's really cool. But and so he'd hang out with us at night, and have a beer or two after we wrapped and talk. And I noticed that every night around like 2 o'clock in the morning or so, if we were all still up, he would excuse himself and go into his room. And I started like it was kind of like the energy around it felt weird. Like he was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I gotta go." And so one night I asked him, I'm like, "Hey man, I couldn't help but notice you get up and you go away around 2 in the morning." He's like, "Yeah, um, I don't really want to I don't want to scare you. You scare easy." I'm like, "Oh, well, hell no, I want to hear it. Tell me now." And so he's like, "Okay." So this guy, he was from London, and I think he was like Tommy Hilfiger's butler, no joke, back in the day. And he retired, took all of his money, and moved to this place. And his whole plan was to buy an old mansion and turn it into a B&B and just like live there. And so he found this place on the outskirts of Monticello, Florida, and set up shop. And he was all by himself, but he like kind of bought it right when he landed, so he didn't really have a chance to really feel it out. So he's
Hmm.
there all by himself, and he started to notice at like 2:12 in the morning every morning, if he was up painting or whatever, uh, noises would start to happen. And then he started getting specific and listening from the noises every night. And what it turns out, apparently, this is what he told me, is like at 2:12 in the morning, a back door sounds like it opens, footstep come through the back door, through the kitchen, up the steps, down the hallway, and into the master bedroom. And he said it's so specific that it started to drive him nuts, and he almost sold the house. But he's like,
Oh
I
my
can't do this. I
god.
put it all together. I can't move now. So the only way he deals with it is because this is apparently the only thing that is haunted in the house, but this happens like clockwork. So he goes into his room, he has an alarm on his watch or whatever, and he turns up like a sound machine or whatever, and he sleeps. Or he puts earplugs or something. I forget what it is. But as long as he's in his room with the door locked, he can process. Kind of like the basement with Arturo. But
Yeah.
habit, and so he doesn't really think about it and doesn't scare him anymore. He just doesn't want to see it or hear it. So I thought he was a chain. I'm like, all right, I think he's just screwing with this because he was a funny guy. But nevertheless, his habit got me thinking. So I told the rest of like the crew that was staying with us, and they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. Like, so we're gonna stay up, right? Like, yeah. So that night we all got more beers and sat around a little bit longer. And we're all like being jovial and like tough guys. And I think I forget who was all with us, but around 2 a.m. rolls around, and suddenly our kind of toughness starts to get a little bit more quiet. And then 2:12 happens, and you could drop a pin, and we're all just like trying to act tough again, but terrified. And nothing happens. And like 2:15 comes around, and nothing happens. And 2:20, and finally people are like, all right, he's screwing with us. That jerk, he really got us, because we were scared. So we all pack up, and I'm cleaning up the beer bottles, and everyone's in the room, and I'm about to turn off the lights. It's like 2:40 or something. And sure enough, in the back, I think I hear a door. And I'm like, what the heck, man? So I walk back there, and sure enough, there's a creak, and you can follow it. And so I followed the sounds. They go up the steps, down the hallway, into the master bedroom. So at that point, I was like, all right, I'm out.
No way.
And then from then on out, I excused myself at 2 a.m. and would go into a room and put
it always happens
beer plugs in.
to be the last person in the party to experience something when everybody leaves. It sounds like something residual. It sounds,
I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing, or I mean, it sounds kind of eerie, but it will tell you where the steps are coming from. That door where the slave quarters in the back, and they're going to the master bedroom. So I don't know what that means.
My gosh,
really spooky, and the place is beautiful, and outside, like I'd go back and just to hear that again, because it's pretty fantastical.
Wow, 12 Oaks in Monticello, Florida, right? Or Monticello, right? Yeah. I can't remember the name of the other Airbnb, but apparently, I think it was Scott and his girlfriend were staying in one of the haunted rooms. And it was like the red room inside of this Airbnb, and it was like the most haunted one because apparently someone was killed in that room, and you can see the ghost of this woman in this room, or she can enter your dreams. And I remember Scott's girlfriend said something like, oh, nothing's happened to us in that room. Sometimes you get a weird vibe, but I remember having like a couple of weird dreams of this woman sitting on my bed. And I'm just like, yeah, that could be her making her presence known. But it just seems like anywhere you would go in this small town, it's like different places would have like ghost stories attached to it, which was so interesting, of course. And then, of course, Justin, you moved to LA, and then you move into this very interesting. It follows you, Justin. It's so interesting. It follows.
What can I say? I like interesting old houses.
Yeah. Like is a word we could definitely throw out there, Justin. This one was very unique.
So Florida State alumni kind of passed this house down for like, I think 20 years in renting. So like when people would move out, someone would kind of to Los Angeles from Tallahassee, they'd be like, everyone knew about this house. And eventually it would just kind of keep cycling through. And so I moved in whenever I came out, again, way too long ago. And this was a house kind of by Jumbo's Clown Room in town, in Los Feliz, on Winona Boulevard. And thing's really old and beautiful, and again, 3 stories in a basement, which is kind of rare for Los Angeles, as you guys know. But kind of a Spanish style, lots of old wood inside, like built-in bars, sliding pocket doors, things like that, and big fireplace, and just gorgeous, beautiful things. Some people said that they saw a lot of things in there. I didn't ever feel anything bad or see anything really terrifying. But the spooky thing about it, theoretically, is that there was a young boy buried in the front yard that was then paved over and turned into a little courtyard. And the reason why we know this is that there was a little tombstone that we found in the basement.
Oh my God.
I know.
And what's his name? And so we did some research, and it looks like that was a case, and that was like the family, then the Penn family or something like that. And so every year on Bobby's birthday, we would have a little birthday party for Bobby and kind of like get a little cake and give him a little offering and celebrate, toast. And I feel like if there was any bad juju, it went away because this guy probably knew that we gave it, and took care of him. So, but it had a lot of character, and I think a couple times. Specifically that tombstone, we had a dog there at one point, and the dog would growl that tombstone from time to time.
Really?
Yeah, and that was a little spooky.
Dogs know.
Yeah, they know. What
know.
were some of the stories or things that people would go through in that house that would kind of freak them out? Have they ever shared that with you?
Yeah, a couple random things where people would see something out in the corner of their eye or a shadow or here and there. No, like nothing that would really like make someone scream and run away. But the spookiest thing that happened in that house is we had a Halloween party one year, and as one does, it's a good idea to break out a Ouija board.
Of course. I attended one of them.
I wonder if you were here at this party. Well, we all ended up in my room on the 3rd floor, sitting on the floor and doing this Ouija board thing. And so the party was going on down below on the 1st floor, and we're on the 3rd floor. And so we're hanging out, doing the Ouija board, and we start getting some responses, and it's someone talking about how they were, an actor, and this is their name, and it was like 1924 or something. They came over, I don't know. And so we started Googling this. I think it was, I was the one Googling this while everyone else was doing the Ouija boards, because I was going to kind of maybe disprove it. So I'm going through the motions, I'm typing, Wikipedia and everything, and nothing's lining up. I'm not finding this. I'm thinking it's kind of BS. But then, and I'm telling them nothing's lining up, and we go through, this is like 30 minutes of pretty specific answers. Came from London. It was an actor. It started in like the pre-talkie era or something like that, and then came out and did this stuff, and then didn't live in the house, but was there in the house now. I'm not sure why, and some other things. And then I'm like, hey, I'm not seeing this guy's name, just so you know. And they said, well, we don't see you or something like that. Is there a reason why? Do you have any other names or something? And he then spelled out like, I forget what it was, but it was a nickname in the front instead of like his main name. And I typed that in, and everything lined right up. Actor that came out from London.
I wish we knew who it was. Oh, that would have been so cool. But
it was really, really scary. Yeah. And the guy seemed cool enough. And we were asking, so we're like, okay, well, do you know the people who live here? And what do you think? Like, yeah, it's cool. And everyone seemed fine. And we asked about one of my roommates who was downstairs. Like, do you know, her name is Kim. And he goes, you spelled out wet. And like, well, that's kind of weird and maybe a little inappropriate. I don't know what's going on here. And then all of a sudden, Kim, like about 5 minutes later or so, came upstairs to change in her room because she had spilled beer all over herself.
Damn.
And we stopped. But yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Damn. When people say that stuff Ouija is fake, no, there's something to it. It could be definitely used as a tool of communication, but that is crazy. I remember I had a very terrifying experience in that house, Justin. I met Leatherface.
That's right. Dan Yeager.
Oh, Dan Yeager. My husband and I, we met Leatherface from one of the the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. You were one of the producers of it. Which one was it? It was the 2000.
I was the associate producer on Texas Chainsaw 3D.
3D, okay.
So and of course I'm friends with all those guys now, and stayed in touch with Dan. And his wife Deborah were there.
Yes,
and he had a costume. I think it's some sort of a.
Freaked me out. The guy is like a beanstalk, and Deborah is like a lowrider. It is like he is super tall, and he had this massive like fake skull head as a mask. Freaked me out. And then he takes it off. He's like, "Oh, hey there," and he's super sweet. He's the sweetest person, and he's like, how tall is he? He's 6'7".
He's huge. And I'm not a big guy, as you know, Tammy. So we'd hang out every now and then, get a whiskey or something, and look like the odd couple of friends.
So we go from now let's go from Texas Chainsaw, and then we go into the Mortuary Collection, and this was like literally I want to say almost 10 years. Could it be 10 years?
It was. We put together a press kit a little bit ago, and it again made me feel old because I was digging through emails and such. And Ryan Spindell, the writer-director, came up with this idea and pitched it to me 10 years ago. And we started trying to get it financed around town, set up, and it was very hard to do. It's a horror anthology, and it's very hard to sell a horror anthology back in the day. Now they're starting to get a little bit more popular again, and that's great because I think a lot of us love those. But back in the day, it was hard to do. So we started trying to get that project off the ground 10 years ago. And about 6 years ago, we got a little fed up with it and decided, well, if it's a horror anthology, which is just a feature comprised of little bitty short stories, let's just shoot one of the short stories because we're getting antsy, and let's use that as a proof of concept to hopefully raise some money to make the feature. And so we got together with people, wonderful people like Tammy, to put together a short called The Babysitter Murders. And we raised money on Kickstarter, I think about like 60 grand, and went out and shot the thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that was 6 years ago. After that, the short was great. We ran around town. It won a lot of film festivals, and we tried again. We're like, hey, finance our movie. Look, it's great. It's awesome. People love it. And after another year or so, finally someone said yes. And so we went out about 3 years ago and started shooting the whole feature, and it just came out 3 weeks ago on Shudder. So it's been a long journey on this one for sure.
It's not easy, right, Justin?
No.
You know, it's very difficult. And there's a lot of our listeners too who are in the film industry or the film genre. Like, what pieces of advice do you have for them to get into film, and especially horror? You know, what pieces of advice do you have for them, like if they're struggling, or where to start?
Well, I mean, I think people say this a lot, but I really believe it. You have to find material that you're personally connected to, that you believe in, that you love. Because if you're just doing something because it's, say, hot right now or formulaic, or someone said, if you can write this or make this, I can get it sold or set up or whatever. If you're doing it for that reason, you're probably not going to have a good time doing it. And at some point, it's so hard to make movies, you're going to quit. You're going to tap out. But if you find a project that you really believe in, and you're doing it with friends that you really love, and you want to be in the trenches, so to speak, with these guys, then that's kind of the whole ballgame, because the process can take 6 years, right? Or 10. If you don't really believe in it, you're going to do something easier with your time. And if you want to do anything, if you have an inkling to, if you're just in it for the money and you just want something like comfort or whatever, there are a million other ways that you can get it a lot easier than making movies. So yeah, I mean, find something that you believe in, that you love, and then don't stop until it's done.
Good words of advice right there. It's so true. We do see this passion. We do. Let's backtrack to The Babysitter Murders. And this house, we had Callie on our show, I want to say a year ago.
Isn't that crazy?
And we shared stories about this house. Justin, you have stories of the first house that we shot. I can't remember the name of the house, but it was right across the street from the house where they used the exterior of people under the stairs. And I found out too that the house that we were shooting in, they used the kitchen, I guess part of the interior of that house, for people under the stairs as well. Can you tell us, I know you have the stories, the creepy happenings that were going on in the house, because
oh god, it's
and then you had a friend who stayed the night, so
that's true. I don't know if I still owe that person quite a bit. This is a great, cool old region of town. It's West Adams, and it's down by like First Emmanuel A&E Church, I think, or something like that. It's down in the West Adams district, and apparently back in the day, like a lot of like Great Gatsby style mansions were built up on this hill overlooking downtown. And for whatever reason, a lot of them just like maybe after the crash or something were abandoned and kind of left to rot and twist in the wind a little bit. And so there are these cool old buildings that were kind of like let go. And over the years, they fell into decay. And then at some point, some individuals like, well, we can rent these out as film sets because there's a lot of character and they're kind of spooky, and people always need big old spooky houses to shoot in Los Angeles. So on that little street, there were 3 houses that were shot in quite a bit that have a lot of cool old history and are legit, old houses. They're not sets. So the one that we shot at, if you ever go there, you'll recognize it in a million horror films because it's just filmed back to back to back to back. Their slates usually like pretty filled up. So when we got in there, we were probably, I don't know, like the 200th horror film to shoot there. And there are remnants within the place of like fake blood splattered on the ceiling. At least you hope it's fake, or like a set with like a coffin sitting in the corner in the basement, So there's all this, the productions left these really eerie things around.
A pentagram.
Oh yeah,
pentagram.
Oh, yeah. And there's a lot of stuff like that kind of unnerves you, but you put in the back of your head, you're like, yeah, this is it's all set dressing, it's all fake. At least you hope. So it was again like a big 2-story old kind of like Gatsby style mansion. It had a fake cemetery. I think it's fake on the side and like outside of it. And the plot of land it was on was kind of set off from the street. So it was kind of spooky and quiet. So on productions of size, like Babysitting Murders, like I said, we only had a little bit of scratch to put it together. And so, we certainly don't have money for like a security guard to stay at night. So that responsibility falls to me. And so I would stay there all night on my own to make sure that no one would break in and take our equipment or anything like that, because we walk away rap and, it's not really a great neighborhood down there. There's some crime. So I'd lock everything up, lock myself in the house, and it would get dead quiet. And I'd go up to my production office room, a bedroom, and roll out my cot and, lay down and try to sleep. And you'd hear things, obviously, creaking in the night and such. And as long as the creaks don't sound like someone rummaging, trying to steal your lights, you kind of let it go. But one night in particular, I remember hearing something. And to this day, it still freaks me out. So I'll back up a little bit. On the 3rd floor, there's an attic. And, we explored every inch of this house just because it's cool and you can. And we weren't shooting in the attic, but I noticed that there's some spooky things in it, kind of in a corner, like an old doll and a couple other items. And one of them was a bowl of marbles. And I remember thinking it's like children marbles. Yeah. And they're really old. And so it's like it kind of creeped me out a little bit. And so one night I'm there and I'm sleeping and I'm trying to sleep and tossing and turning. I'm hearing some things. And then I wake up, not knowing why, but you get that feeling like I should be paying attention. It's like your mind woke you up for a reason. Like whatever you heard was important.
Yeah.
And then I hear it again. And it's the sound of a marble rolling in the attic. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, there's no way that was a marble. And so I sit up, right? And there was a fan kind of like nearby. So I go in the other room, turn off the fan. I listen. It's dead quiet. And there it goes again. A roll. And I'm like,
oh no.
Okay, great. So I think someone's up there, like screwing around. And I had a machete. I don't know why. It's my only weapon. It's kind of decorative, right? So I'm a little terrified. I grab my machete and a flashlight because there's no power in the attic. And I climb up into the attic and I shine a light thinking that someone's up there screwing around. And there's no one up there. And there's no way someone could have gotten out. And so I look, I don't see any marbles on the floor, but I go over to the bowl and the bowl looks to have moved a little bit. And I'm like, all right, well, something's screwing around up here having fun. Just let it do it. And I said my piece and I went downstairs and I think I slammed a beer or two really quickly and brought that fan into my room, put it right by my head so I couldn't hear a darn thing and tried to sleep. So yeah, that's the scary story of that location that I remember pretty well. And I had a buddy, my father came into town, so I was going to hang out with him one night. And so I had a friend tap in and stay there for me. And the next day it was a similar Arturo situation where he was waiting outside for me to pull up.
No.
Heard a lot of things. Don't want to get into it, but I'm ready to go home.
Oh my God. And this guy, I think he was he was military and everything. Like he's like, yeah, I've seen things. So this is like nothing. And sure enough.
He was like, it's kind of cool. I could stay in this house by myself. And I think he kind of wanted a challenge, maybe, but it broke him too. He was waiting outside out there. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It seemed like that was like the story with everyone too, especially the set designer or set dresser. She was there with you and Ryan and you guys went to go get pizza and she was by herself inside the house and she heard, it sounded like someone was walking up the stairs and up and down the hallway. She called out to you and sure enough, no response. And it was the same thing, Arturo's situation. She's sitting outside and you guys finally come back with the pizza. And she's like, I for one thought you guys were seriously back, and I thought you guys were going up, like we're on the second floor. And she said that
Jokes
something.
on you guys, I was. No, I'm just
Yeah.
all these years. You thought you were.
And yeah, she said that something. It sounded like someone or something was in the house with her, and she was the only one there at that time, as you guys were getting a late dinner. So yeah, that house was definitely pretty interesting. Yeah, Kelly and we didn't really feel or sense anything. I know that one of the stories we heard from the AD was I think there was a wall or a platform that was leaned against a wall one evening, and when we came in one morning, people were freaking out because that entire platform was on the floor, on the ground, and they don't know how that happened. And they're like, it didn't look like it slid onto the ground. I mean, the way that we kind of erected it against the wall, like it was pretty solid. So for it to end up on the floor that way, they were just like, we don't know what happened. There wasn't any damage to it, and no scratches or anything. So it was whatever's there. It was definitely making its presence known to everyone. Like, I guess, like you said, Justin, like, we're here. Don't mess around with the house, kind of thing.
If you're haunting that house, you're attached to that for some reason. All these production companies like come in and they punch holes in the walls, and they scratch up the floor, and they don't care. And we did a lot of work because when we showed up, there were literally holes in the walls and other stuff. It was vacant, empty, and we wanted to make it look like a lived-in home, like an actual house. So like we painted all the walls, we patched holes, we did all these things. So by the time it was done, you couldn't really tell that it was pretty broken down. I mean, the thing could be condemned. There's literally holes that you can like look through the walls and see like downtown LA. At least there was when we shot there a few years ago. But yeah, it's like we put a lot of TLC into it, so maybe that's why we didn't get the Jesus scared out of us. Who knows? I'm sure if you ask around and the next person you interview, if they're in the film business and they do any genre films, at some point they will shot at that house.
At the West Adam.
And I bet that they will know and they will have some stories.
Yeah, there was a slew of productions there. I know, like they filmed like a scene in Jason or Halloween, one of those horror films, and
so many.
There's so many shows that were shot there too. They use a couple of the rooms. So yeah, I mean, and Bryce and I even talk about this. It's also what is brought into the location. So what is manifested when actors are, delivering their lines with emotions and stuff like that. So Lord knows what was like left there, from those feels and those emotions.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, real actors are great at that. I mean, it's an honest reaction. They're tapping into that visceral emotion that's coming out. And if you leave that, or if you use that other energy funnels through that, I'm sure it's seen some pretty dark opportunities,
Oh, absolutely. Now, we go from West Adams to Heritage Square, Justin.
Oh, I love Heritage Square.
Whole weeks. Now, I just saw a major special on travel with Jack Osborne and the family. So Jack Osborne takes Kelly Osborne, his sister, to Heritage Square because the place hasn't been fully or professionally investigated in years or televised. So he goes there, and sure enough, they experience a lot of interesting haunts, especially in the Octagon home. And I'm just sitting there watching the show. I'm like, we've been there for try being there for 2 whole weeks, like 12 hours a day. Yeah. And not to mention, we first started shooting in the Green Home, the Hale House, which they also investigated. But I don't know, do you remember any stories and connections to any of the departments or from Ryan that people had experiences in one of the homes in Heritage Square?
Yeah, nothing specific. Unfortunately, you would think that there is a lot that's going on there because of the history. And you've explained what Heritage Square is to your audience before, right? It's all these beautiful old homes that they moved over there. And so they come from all over the place. And they all are distinctive in their own way. The Octagon House does seem to have like some strange energy. I think the Hale House is just beautiful and kind of, Victorian Gothic kind of thing going on. It's spooky and cool, but not, I think it doesn't feel off in any way. It just feels like pristine kind of energy. But that Octagon House, the parts of the walls have been broken out, and there's like wallpaper behind slats, and kind of like it has some strange energy. Plus, there's like, I don't know if there's a whole feng shui thing going on, but houses aren't built like kind of in the round, so to be
Right.
able to move from one room to the next room to the next room, and that's the only way you can come like in or out or anything, it's just a little odd. So the
Yeah.
energy there was it was a little spooky. And I will admit to when closing up at the end of the day, to maybe running away. Like if you that feeling you get when you're going upstairs from the basement or something. You
Yes.
can't walk upstairs from the basement, and so it's that same kind of thing. You just feel like something's in there in that octagon house for sure.
Yeah, a lot of people had problems in that house. Like I remember Callie said that people like would go in and come out feeling very sick and very disoriented.
Yeah.
And there's a bathroom there on the first level that people hated to walk through. And and I think Ryan said something where he was using that bathroom and something happened where everything seemed like it came to a silence or a halt. And it just seemed like it was like a time stop. Like things just all of a sudden went quiet, and he was just like, "What's going on?"
It's a bad sound on a film set.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a minute, what just happened?
But yeah, that house, like it got to quite a few people. And I remember watching the show with Jack Osborne, but that was the house that really they captured a lot of anomalies and a lot of things that people they couldn't explain. But I remember like us shooting out of that house for like an entire week, and I was like, yeah, that house was interesting. I didn't like going into that house either. Like there was just, I don't know, something about it that
it was
really
disorienting.
Yeah, it was very disorienting.
It kind of knocked you off. And of course we put like, there's a haze that's used that, so at the house, and the lighting that we were doing was very moody. And we made it very claustrophobic because like, if you see the movie, this is where, this is Till Death. So Wendell and Carol are in their apartment, and a bunch of like kind of claustrophobic books and a lot of bunnies, because that's gifts that Wendell would give to Carol, all over the place. And so the thing was made to kind of feel lived in, but like run down.
Right.
And so of the set dressing and the fog and the atmosphere and the lighting, and in that place in and of itself, which is just very, again, a little unnerving how it's laid out, and has some history that you just kind of can feel or almost smell. Yeah, it's pretty spooky.
Yeah, I was in the Hale house, and it was so interesting because I remember like, oh, where's wardrobe going to be placed? And I remembered the docents who were there. They're like, oh, you're going to be on the second level. I'm like, really? Like, because no one's allowed on the second floor. Yeah. And I was like, score, because I've heard of the house. I heard of its like possible paranormal, associations to the house, and I was like, I'll get to do some investigations. But sure enough, while I was stationed out of there, I remember I was fixing a pair of pants for one of the supporting actors, and I could have sworn I heard like children giggling. I heard running back and forth in the hallway, and there was a story associated to one of the master bedrooms across from where I was stationed of a woman in white. So I would hear some strange things coming out of that master bedroom. And every time I would open that door into that bedroom, nothing was out of place. No one or nothing was there. So it was a very interesting location. But like you said, I mean, in some places you're going to feel like when you're in danger, when it's negative. But I didn't feel like it was negative. I felt like there was something there that was trying to make itself known. And I think it was just either playing with me or trying to say hi. But after I left, I felt like such an attachment to the house, like, oh no, don't leave. Like kind of like it was pulling me back. It was very hard to explain, but
every time I come back to Heritage Square, I feel the same thing in those homes. It almost is like, if you're good to them, they probably want you to stick around and come back and like an old friend. But if you're, you trust, then that could probably turn pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Something else interesting about Heritage Square is they have a lot of donations of like wardrobe and like books, like medical equipment and other stuff. So they have museums and things on the campus there, but they also like have dressed every home with real artifacts that like someone has willed. So like the record player in this one house is like this beautiful old family heirloom that was donated, or there's an exhibit with like one of the homes was set up to be like one of those homes from back in the day where it's a doctor that lives in half the house and the other half is his practice. So like all the tools, there's a bed and thing there that like would allow him to operate on and such. And so these things are all real. They're not props, and they're given from like, passed down over generations and donated to Heritage Square. So every one of those elements that's throughout these houses has a story probably as well. And so if it might not be the physical house, there's probably opportunities for,
other
entities to be attached to these things that mean they meant so much to someone. If you take a doctor's tools that he worked with every day for his career and you move it, maybe if there is a ghost associated, it might go with the tools. So there's a lot of interesting energy there. And yeah, I never felt anything bad, but it definitely felt palatable.
Yes. And I remember it. I think the biggest house there was the Octagon, that people were like, get me the hell out of that house. Just get me out. Yeah. But that is true. Yeah. That's what I remember telling one of the assistants there. I'm like, because I was asking them, I was like, is there any stories that you have? She's like, definitely the Octagon. I think the other one, I can't remember the name of the White House. It was the White Queen Anne Victoria. And she's like, that one has a little weird vibe to it too. But she's like, other than that, nothing else. But we've heard stories, and I told her, yeah, you guys have a lot of antiques here. I think that has attachments, and it clicked in her head. She's like, yeah, you're right. Like we have a whole room of things that we still haven't gone through that have been donated to us. So, I mean, it's like this whole square is like this little orphanage of like,
Yeah.
big structures that have been passed down and all these little trinkets and wardrobes. So it's so cool. But yeah,
big old black Victorian dresses everywhere. My God, like those are. I don't care how many times you see it. When you round a corner and there's like an old, like I don't know, morning dress, like in a like standing up on a mannequin, it still scares the bejesus out of me. So they had an exhibit there when we were filming, which had a few of those in a room, if you remember, Tammy. And that was nope, didn't like that.
Yeah, I will admit I did get freaked out seeing it in the corner of my eye. I'm like, what? Whoa, okay, that's a mannequin. That's a mannequin. Okay. All right, we're all good. Oh. So now the production moves from Heritage, and you guys go to it's Portland, right? It's Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, we go to Portland in Astoria.
In Astoria, and you guys were set up in another Queen Anne that had all these stories attached.
What are the odds?
Yeah, what are the odds, Justin? Tell us about that location and actually that town. That town has a lot of interesting history. It was also shown on an episode of Ghost Adventures.
Yeah, I mean, those guys up there, we're friends with a lot of them now because we were there for 2 months filming and became friends with a lot of the locals. They're great people up in Astoria, Oregon. It's like a very small town, maybe 10,000 people or so. And it's from, like, you might recognize it from the Goonies or Short Circuit or Kindergarten Cop. Back in the day, things were filmed there all the time. But it hasn't happened for a while, except for a lot of traction from like ghost hunting teams that go up there. When we were there, the Ghost Adventurer guys from Travel Channel, whatever, we're just wrapping up filming too. And that seems to happen at least a couple times a year. People will show up and they will capture the town again and again because it has so much history. And you can look it up and see all these great old pictures of the way it was set up. And the interesting thing about the town itself is it used to be kind of like a cannery town. So, and ships kind of come in on the Washington River, big ocean liners, and are kind of brought through all the way to Portland. So there's a lot of people coming and going throughout the years in this town. A lot of transient, like, sailors and other kind of blue collar guys that might just kind of make their way through over the years.
Right.
So a lot of old hotels and a lot of like big old kind of like industry money had built these pretty cool homes on hills overlooking, so like they could see the ships coming and going and things. So the other cool thing about the town is that it was built, a good portion of it, on top of like a platform, so to speak. So the water, kind of like what am I trying to say, with the pillars and everything. So it was built on these wooden kind of planks, so the water could go underneath it. But over the years, they realized it's a bad idea because fire could just kind of wipe out the town, and it happened a couple times. So there are these great fires that would start to burn, and they couldn't stop it. It would just keep working its way through the town until they like shut it down. But the last time that happened, they built it back even stronger, and they made they sealed off parts underneath the town with like concrete. And so ultimately the town has a network of tunnels that go throughout the whole thing that, connect homes and businesses. And you could, at one point back in the day, walk completely from like one part of town to the other on these tunnels. And they even had like these old stained glass kind of like holes that they chip out in the concrete above the tunnel, so light could kind of come through with colored light, which is kind of eerie if you think about it.
Oh.
So there's a good friend of mine, Jeff Daly, does tours under the tunnels, taking you through the tunnels, so you can experience kind of like what life was like back in the day moving throughout. But the whole network of underground caverns beneath this town is pretty spooky. Apparently also, this is where they would Shanghai people. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
So back in the day, and I was surprised to find out this is a real thing. So you'd have like drunken jerks that would they'd want to get rid of in the town. And the way to do this was, apparently when you get so drunk, sometimes they'd even slip them things in their drinks to make them more drunk. There were trap doors in some of these bars that they pull a lever and they drop down into the tunnels below. There, a guy would go in a wheelbarrow, throw him in there. Even apparently they give him some, I guess they enlisted the support of the town mortician, who had like formaldehyde or something that they put over their mouth so they'd really pass out. And they take them onto a ship that's about to take off. They wake up on the ship when they're already out to sea, and then they'd have to work off their room and board on the ship, or theoretically they'd be thrown overboard or something. And they're gone to China for
oh my god,
like 2 months, and then they come back or whatever. And I would imagine they're pretty pissed. But that's a way that they would crew up ships and get undesirables out of town. And say Shanghai them. And that's a spooky idea, but apparently that actually happened.
That is some
trap
next
doors
level.
Oh,
that is some next level passive aggression.
So don't piss off people in Astoria or anywhere else, because who knows? Maybe you wake up on an ocean line.
Oh my god, that is. I had no idea about that little
cool.
town, and that does sound pretty cool. Oh my gosh.
And but, it's a great town. It's beautiful. The people are awesome. Everyone should go visit Astoria, Oregon. It's unbelievable. I want to shoot many more movies there.
But, I was excited to hear that Goonies was shot there along the circuit. Yeah, of course.
And it's so idyllic, and it's hilly, and the water's right there, and it's foggy and kind of eerie throughout. So it's very atmospheric. And the reason why we went up there was we were looking for the mortuary that we're featuring in the movie. So we looked all over the country and even in Canada for the perfect setup for what this iconic mortuary would be. And we found that in the Flavel House, which is there in Astoria. And so that's the mortuary you see in the Mortuary Collection. And it's this giant old Victorian that the film doesn't even really do it justice, because you look at it on the outside and it looks like something's a little off about it, but it looks like a pretty big old Victorian house. But when you go inside, you realize the ceilings feel like they're 40 feet tall. The proportions are all off. And so the attic is larger than my house over here in Los Feliz or Silver Lake.
Yeah.
It's it's crazy how the proportions are just so ginormous there that it takes on a very unique identity when you're in it. But it's very cool, and of course a lot of history from the Flavel family, and it's a lot of people, a lot of late nights and early mornings there too, and people will swear up and down that they saw things there as well. So
yes, we Kelly was telling us that her and the wardrobe girl, I think it was Savannah, that was there, because Savannah was taking over the costume unit over there in Portland.
Right, because we couldn't bring you up there.
Yeah. Bryce can contest because he was working with me at the same time at the school, and there's so much going on. I was like, crap, I can't go. But I remember Savannah was such an amazing chick, because she helped so much from that side of the town. But she and Callie would tell me stories about the Flavel House that, had an interesting vibe to it. I think something happened in the bathroom where people did not like to use a specific bathroom on the second floor. you think going into the bathroom, you would have some privacy. And apparently this one on the second floor, it was the complete opposite. And
Sure.
then there were wreaths that you would find, or certain like decor items in frames that looked so interesting that close enough you get, you realize, oh, they're made out of real human hair.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Another source of like, possible, items having some sort of like attachment to it, of course. And then, of course, Savannah was telling me that there was an incident in her room where the blinds, I guess, opened or closed by themselves. Like they shook violently by themselves. So, of course, first week, everybody's moving into this house. So crazy things are manifesting. But I don't know if you heard anyone else had like any other crazy stories attached to the Flavel house. But it's more like, oh, we just kept on seeing things in the corner of our eye kind of thing, right?
A lot of like kind of shadow dancing kind of stuff where like,
got you.
Really? Wait, were you just there? Were you just talking? That kind of stuff.
Right.
I heard a lot of that. The spooky thing for me about the house was in the second floor where like the master suites were, there's this weird wall in the middle of the hallway. I don't know if Savannah mentioned this, but it has like marbling or kind of like a tapestry of wood at the top, and it goes almost up to the top of the hallway. Again, these are huge hallways. And I'm like, what is that? So I asked the owner, like, why is there a wall in the middle of the hallway upstairs? And he's like, oh, well, that was because, again, like all these old homes similar to the one in the Kirksdale house, at one point, there was just one surviving member of the family that was living by themselves. And she was there in that hall, like in the master bedroom. And at night, she was scared that someone would come in to the house and get her, right? So she would lock that door, like a gate, to get to her bedroom. So that energy kind of makes me a little uneasy. If someone was scared every night, they're sleeping there alone. It's a big house that they literally built a wall to protect them. So that's a little eerie. Yeah.
That's very eerie. Oh my God.
And it might have just been good sense. Maybe she wasn't scared, but my imagination, of course, goes to the place where like, oh my God, she's there, listening to things and hearing noises and worried that people could come up and get her. Or maybe not people. I don't know.
Oh God, don't say that.
By all accounts, the Flavels are really nice, but who knows? Anything with old history like that,
Another big question too. We got this a while back when we had Callie on our episode. Did you guys ever experience problems with the camera, electronics, sound going off by itself? There's this element where, film crews who've gone to haunted locations have had things happen to their equipment when they're perfectly functioning fine one minute and then boom, the next minute they're dead. So I don't know if you had any issues.
I have, and it's funny, I can't think of the specifics, but this has happened a couple times in eerie locations. I find myself in eerie locations a lot, where film batteries will drain really fast. And, camera teams are, very savvy, and they're like, oh, maybe there's something wrong with this battery. We'll recycle this and we'll do the thing, whatever. And they swap them out, but I've seen it happen before where batteries will go down very, very fast, where it should last, 2 hours, will last 10 minutes. And it'll be gone, and they'll have to swap it out. And I think if you talk to any camera team or DP, they'll have a lot of stories about that. I think the way that perhaps these things manifest have to do with, electricity, or at least they can be registered with electricity. And batteries do drain quite a bit in some of these areas. So, yeah, I don't remember anything specifically up there for that, but I do have, here's an interesting one that just happened. This is in the Mortuary Collection, but another movie I just finished called The Old Ways.
Yes, I forgot.
So, Callie was on that as well. And there is a strange sequence that happened there where we were filming more or less an insert. And for those of you who don't know, it's just a simple, it's not a big scene with actors. Just we're shooting, in this case, a series of books that we had and drawings that we had made. And the movie The Old Ways is kind of about a bruja. And so, there's like shamanism and all that stuff involved. And so in this one book that we were shooting, we had an artist draw different, like ritualistic kind of things and symbols. And, like a lot of it he made up from his head, I think, but he might have researched some other ones. I'm not quite sure, but we had to shoot that thing, no joke, 3 different times, because every time we something would go wrong with the card that would be saving the file.
Oh my
And
God.
it got to the point where on the fourth try it worked. But if it didn't on the fourth try, no joke, I was going to literally say, okay, we should not be doing this. Like, there's something about it which doesn't want to be captured. But we got it, and it's in the movie.
Yeah.
I'll look at it at some point, probably next year. It'll be out.
I highly recommend that you look at and watch the trailer for this film. It is scary. But our Callie that we had on our show was the makeup artist, and I remember her sitting in my dining room table designing the makeup for it. And I remember waking up freaking out because I went to go grab the coffee one morning and she had them all over the table. I was like, holy shit, what is this? And she's like, oh, this is the makeup. It is so good, but it is about brujeria. It's about a girl who is going through a possession. And, you know, Callie was telling me there's some scenes that you just felt like there could have been a presence.
And it was on the soundstage. We built
it was on a soundstage, yeah.
Burbank. But this, again, the props we brought in, a lot of them, you know, have a lot of history.
Yeah.
A lot of them were brought in from the Southwest and were flown in from different parts of the world. So there's a lot of authenticity, even on something that, you know, when we built a set. So you never know where that kind of energy can come from. But in this case, it's so strange. I mean, this wasn't an old book that we were shooting. It was a new book, but there might have been or something in there that was doing something weird, because after it happened twice for kind of like, well, that's a weird coincidence. 3 times, everyone kind of got a little scared.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh my goodness. But that is, you, Justin, and these locations and these things. I'm surprised you're still alive sitting right now.
Oh, me too. Me too.
But thank you so much for sharing these stories, telling us a little tidbit about, the industry and everywhere else. Where can people find you? And also, where can they watch the Old Ways and the Mortuary Collection?
Sure. So the Mortuary Collection's out right now on Shudder. Check out Tammy's amazing work. It's unbelievable. And I was talking a little bit before we started recording about how I've been seeing different reviews come out, and a lot of them specifically mention wardrobe. So well done, Tammy.
Thank you so much. Well, our listeners really did enjoy the movie. They were very excited for it, Justin. They were really, really stoked about it. And can people find the Old Ways?
Old Ways will be out sometime next year. I can't tell you too much about what's going to happen with it, but we've already figured it out, and it's big news. So
proud of you guys. And Callie designed the makeup. I just
unbelievable makeup.
She did such a great job. Like I will never forget her sitting at this dining room table that I'm sitting here right now, and her just like cramming it out, like just knocking it out. I'm like, hey, Callie, I'm going to go to bed, okay? Boom, next morning, it's like, what the hell?
We've only played at Sitges Film Festival in Spain. That's where we premiered. We're going to play at a few others before we come out to the public, but there's already fan art on Callie's makeup. So it's that cool that people already like it so much that they're kind of doing their own thing. So look out. I think
insane. Oh, my God.
It's pretty cool.
Oh. I'm so proud of her. I know. She's grown up and gone to do bigger and bigger things. Justin, are you currently working on another crazy horror film again, or?
Ryan and I are hard at work getting the next thing going. So hopefully it won't take another 10 years. But I think it's going to go a little faster this time.
With pandemic, it could. Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
But we hopefully will have a lot more opportunities to go to weird, spooky places and bring stories out of that. So maybe we'll have another excuse to talk after that.
Yes, because I'm sure it's going to be in another haunted location. There's going to be a lot of other.
And I'm going to call you and try to get you to come with us. So
yeah, of course. Why not?
Bryce, you're coming too. Remember. We're going to follow you around with a BTS camera. That's what's going to happen.
Yes.
I, for one, cannot wait. I'm twitching. It's fine.
Well, thank you once again, Justin, for taking the time to sit and talk with us, to talk about horror, to talk about the industry, and to talk about ghost stories attached to film sets. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. I love listening.
Thank you. Anything else you want to deliver or say before we close out? Nope.
Check out our work on the Mortuary Collection. # Mortuary Collection if you like it. And yeah, we'll hopefully we can give you guys some more fun stories in the future.
Yes, and also go Knowles, go Seminoles, go Florida.
That's right. Go FSU.
Well, thank you so much, Justin, once again. And guys, be sure to watch the Mortuary Collection on Shudder.
Another huge thank you to our friend and special guest, Justin Ross. Thank you, Justin, for taking the time out to sit down and speak horror films and ghost stories and haunted film sets. I mean, when you add 3 of those concoctions together, you get one hell of an amazing episode. Am I right? Now, if you're interested in learning more about Justin's upcoming film, The Old Ways, which I highly recommend, guys, that you watch the trailer. You can find it on YouTube and IMDb. You can find out more information on RottenTomatoes.com, YouTube, and IMDb.com. If you're interested in watching the Mortuary Collection, which you can now, you can stream the movie on the horror film streaming app of Shudder. You can sign up for a 7-day trial. You can watch Shudder for 7 days for free. If you're like myself, I love the Friday the 13th movies, and you can binge on all of them literally in one day. How do I know this? I've done it many times. So yes, be sure to catch the Mortuary Collection on Shudder. And you know, another thing that we like too is when we see our listeners rate and review our podcast. It means the world to us. Guys, if you have a minute or two, please go on Apple Podcasts, rate and review us, give us 5 stars. It really helps us indie podcasters out so much. It helps us become a little more visible. And if you can't get enough of Hollyweird Paranormal, then you can stalk us on hollyweirdparanormal.com. Yes, we're big adults. We have a website, and you can binge our past seasons and our episodes on the website. You can read our bios. You can shop on our merch store. You can even tune into us on Deezer, Google Play, Castbox, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Blueberry.net, or wherever you get your podcast fix. And if you're even more of a fan of Hollyweird Paranormal and you want to be a Hollyweird producer, you can by joining our Patreon. We have a phenomenal Patreon page and a group of patron members who we adore the hell out of. You can sign up and learn more on www.patreon.com/Hollyweird Paranormal. And what's amazing about joining our Patreon is that you'll automatically be inducted to our secret podcast society of Saturday Night Ghost Club. If you can't get enough of Hollyweird Paranormal, then you can tune into a couple of these creepy stories that I've collected from friends, coworkers, and acquaintances of their real life scary stories, ghost stories, everything that will make you sleep with 3 or more nightlights on. Saturday Night Ghost Club, you won't regret it. You'll also be gifted magnets, stickers, coasters, pins, just for as little as $1 or more per month for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. It doesn't matter. We truly, from the bottom of our hearts, really appreciate your support and the support of our patrons, and a little does go a long way, and it really does help this Hollyweird Paranormal podcast train moving. And we love to see your beautiful faces, and we love to read your messages, and we love it when we also stalk your Facebook and your Instagram. That's all Bryce, so he does the due diligence, just saying. All right, friends. Till next time, be sure to be taking care of yourselves, checking in with one another, and most importantly, stay Hollyweird. We have more interviews and episodes to come in the future, some really great ones. So stay tuned. We'll leave you with the rest of Wild Cherry. Till next time, friends.